Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of the Battle for the Virginia Central Railroad custom multiplayer game. In the future, I'm just going to call it Battle for the VCR for short. It makes it a heck of a lot easier for me. If you've already watched these videos in the past with other battles that we've had, you kind of understand how all this works. So I'm not going to go into a ton of detail in this video because I feel like I've just been rehashing a lot of things with these introductory episodes. But if you want more information, you can click on the link below. It'll take you to my multiplayer page, and you can get some more information. But really quickly, just what is a double-blind custom multiplayer game, which is what we're going to be doing here. It is a game in which a moderator, myself, creates a scenario in which the participants have no knowledge of the number of men involved or the setups at the very start. And this creates an extremely difficult battle for the two sides, as they must go into the affair without all the usual advantages of prior knowledge, knowing where the enemy is, their reinforcement schedule, their numbers, all of that. And as I mentioned, you can click on the link below for more information about my multiplayer games and that's what makes them a little bit different. So the teams for this multiplayer game, it is going to be a 6-on-6 game, which is, to be honest, a lot bigger than I usually do. I usually max out at 4-on-4. But in this instance, what we're going to do is each side will have one non-playing captain and one non-playing executive officer. And that leaves 4 different players moving the actual men on the board. The reason I did this is just for command purposes. I thought it'd be kind of fun to have a designated commander who doesn't actually move his troops. Having a backup commander also allows more people to participate and to just have fun. The backstory of the Battle for the VCR. You can read through all this if you like here real quick. Just hit the pause button, you can read it. In short, it is September 1863. Meade is launching his own offensive against Robert E. Lee, and Lee is responding to that, and they are coming to battle to the northwest of Richmond itself, somewhere along the Virginia Central Railroad. Looking now at the order of battle for the two sides, we have the Army of Northern Virginia, which is composed of Longstreet's, Ewell's, Hill's, and Stewart's Corps. Altogether, there are 57,488 infantrymen, 5,500 artillerymen, 220 guns, and just over 12,000 cavalrymen in the Army of Northern Virginia, so it is a sizable force. For the Federals, their order of battle looks like this. They have a total of 95,000 men, and they have 5 different infantry corps and 1 cavalry corps. The 11th and 12th have been sent to the west, so they are not here for this battle. But Meade still fields a large army. Altogether, he has just over 75,000 infantrymen, 6,750 artillerymen with 270 guns, and just over 13,000 cavalrymen. Now we're going to take a look at the map we're going to be using. For this battle, we are using the Overland game itself. It's really hard to find maps people haven't used, so hopefully this is one of them. As you can see, we have Gordonsville in the upper left, and we have Hanover Junction down in the bottom right. Those are the two extreme map ends. The Confederates will be at Hanover Junction, and the Federals coming from Gordonsville. And you would think, right, that the two sides will move directly upon one another and they'll meet somewhere in the middle for a battle right around here. And it will be framed by the North and the South Anna Rivers. And that's what I wanted everybody to think. And this is really where I begin to have my fun. These games, I like to create differently and I like to challenge everyone, and I think that's what makes them so popular. So right off the bat, this is not what's going to happen here at all. This is how I set it up, and this is what I want the two sides to believe, at least for the Confederates, what I want them to believe. But it will not play out like this. So let's go to the backstory. And if you did take the time to read it before, good. Did you catch anything? And if you want to read it through right now, hit the pause button, feel free. But take a critical look at it. And what do you see? Well, let's just get rid of that top part there. That's all just filler backstory, not really important. But I want to sort of set up something here unique, and I want to put a few clues in this description to give the Confederates an opportunity to maybe catch on to what possibly might be happening here. So I used words like Meade did not halt, and Lee assumed something was going on, and they were rumored to be, along with heavy enemy cavalry prevented, and Meade had learned much, and they were maneuvering more aggressively. And all these different phrases are within these two paragraphs here on the bottom. When we play these games, sometimes we just assume that the designer is going to present us with a very straightforward battle, where you're going to come together, you're going to knock heads, and that's going to be the end of it. I don't like to do that. If you've played one of my games, you know I hate that. So I decided to create this really bland backstory in this battlefield where it just seemed everything was going to go according to schedule, and you were just going to have this collision and it would just be a traditional battle. But that's not what's going to happen. So what is really going on with this description? Well, again, if you look at all those key words, you should realize Meade is not going to follow the script. So for the Confederates, let's just cover them first. Lee is moving directly from Hanover Junction along the Virginia Central Railroad towards Gordonsville. That's pretty straightforward. Lee is at Hanover and he's moving to the northwest to engage the Federals that are rumored to be around Gordonsville. The rebel plan is just straightforward. He's looking for a battleground to once more fight Meade and the Army of the Potomac. He's not really thinking that Meade is going to do anything out of the ordinary because, really, the Federal officers up to this point in the war have been pretty dull, for lack of a better phrase. You've got McClellan, Pope, McDowell, Hooker, Burnside. These guys aren't really thinking outside of the strategic box too much, and when they do, like Hooker, they get caught in the wilderness. So Lee is giving Meade very little credit here. But there is a problem. Looking at the map now from the Federal perspective, you will see that the Army of the Potomac is not at all where you thought they'd be, because Meade is not following the script. He marched from Gordonsville south to the South Anna River, and he has positioned his army to strike Lee as he moves to the northwest. Meade has moved his army, like I said, to outflank Lee's army and hopefully strike them from the south as they move along the railroad line towards Gordonsville. Up around Tollersville, you can see that there is a Union cavalry division, both there and at Louisa, and that's part of Buford's division. They are to distract Lee and keep him as long as possible focused on the area northwest of Meade's actual position. So they're there basically just to distract Lee and to keep him looking in the wrong direction as long as possible. Now, Meade doesn't know exactly where Lee is at the moment, and Meade's cavalry is late getting into position on his eastern flank. But there is no time to waste as the sun comes up on September 19th. I'm going to go ahead and just pull up the map here, and this is both sides completely on the map now. You can see the Federals south of the South Anna River and the Confederates over to the east. And Pleasanton has disappeared on this map, and that is because he does not arrive for about 5 hours of gameplay. 10:20 a.m. is when he will make his appearance. So the Federals have just one cavalry division, but for the Confederates, they have their entire cavalry force. And that's going to hurt Meade as he tries to advance and strike Lee's flank. He has no cavalry screen. One other thing bears mentioning here. I did mention that Stuart had sent a scouting brigade to explore the Federal lines and to try to discover their actual position. Well, Stuart's scouting brigade has actually spotted Meade south of the South Anna River. And with this information, they are now hightailing it back to Robert E. Lee to spread the alarm that the Army of the Potomac has completely outflanked them. This scouting brigade will take about 4 hours to ride back to Hanover Junction and to alert Lee of the development. Meade, discovering this and knowing that his cover is blown, has to move very quickly. So the game begins at 5 a.m. The Confederates will not learn from that cavalry brigade that they had been outflanked until 9 a.m. That leaves Meade with a 4-hour window to completely move on the Confederate flank without being detected, unless Stuart happens to run across his forces. So for the Federals, it should be a straightforward get over the river as fast as possible, strike Lee, and hit them as hard as they can before Lee realizes what's going on. After Lee learns of Meade's movement, who knows what will happen? Will Lee completely turn to face south and fight them along the South Anna River? Will he counterattack? Will he fall back to Frederick's Hall? What's he going to do? I really don't know, and this is going to be a fun battle to watch develop because it can go in so many different directions. So again, why would I create a game like this with, really, I'm just going to call it misleading the two sides, or at least the Confederates? Well, every game needs to be a bit different, right? I wanted to create one with some serious fog of war elements which would really challenge the two sides. And I know someone's saying, well, you made it really hard for the Confederates. Well, sure. The Federals have an early advantage in that they are moving unexpectedly against the rebels. But the rebels have all their cavalry on the map, while the Federals must wait 5 hours until Pleasanton arrives with the remaining Federal horsemen. And that is crucial, and I don't think you could really underestimate how crucial that is. Stuart is going to be all over the map, and it's probably not going to take them too long to realize there's Federal infantry south of where they expected them to be. And Meade will be moving, as I said, without any cavalry to screen his front, against an enemy he only suspects is somewhere to the north. So that's not going to be easy for the Federals as well. And for Lee, he will have to adjust radically as the morning progresses based on unexpected events. After 9 a.m., the rebel plans should be totally reworked. So, my 2 cents on the battle setup so far, to be honest, I think this is going to be a really fun battle to watch. My games usually are. These multiplayer contests always seem to go in a direction that you just don't expect, and so I think this one's going to be no different. The important thing, and what I'm looking forward to seeing, is can the rebel team decipher the battle setup information I provided, and perhaps move more cautiously at the very start? I used a lot of phrases like, they expected, or they assumed, or Meade was moving aggressively. Are they going to read between the lines, or will they be just overconfident? And will they move as fast as possible to the northwest in order to try to find the Federal Army? We're going to have to wait and see. Without any cavalry to screen his advance, can Meade still achieve the surprise he hoped for? Or will the lack of cavalry cause him to stumble into a battle too early and give away his plans prematurely? Both sides have some advantages and both sides have some problems that they need to overcome. As I said, it'll be fun to watch, see how it develops. So the victory conditions for this battle. As with all my multiplayer games, there are 2 ways to win, strategically and militarily. To win strategically, you need to capture objectives and hold them at the end of the battle. Going back to the overhead map now, you can see that there are 11 different objectives on the map. And for one side or the other to win, they need to hold the majority of those at the end of the battle. To be honest, that's not going to happen. Very seldom do these battles ever come down to the objectives. It usually comes down to casualties. So these objectives here are on the map, really just to give the two sides some guidance as to how they're going to play this. Could one side or the other win by holding the objectives? Sure they could, but it seems very unlikely unless one side just runs to the corner of the map and hides. But that's not really possible with this setup. So the other way to win is militarily, and that means inflicting significant losses on your enemy and forcing them to retreat. So in order to achieve a military victory, we use the point system. So the infantry, cavalry, artillery, supply, and leader points lost are all added up for each side until one or the other crosses their point threshold. If that happens, their opponent automatically wins the game. In this game, the point limit for the two sides are 13,400 for the Federals and 11,000 for the Confederates. Just as an idea of how you could reach those point totals, 20,000 infantry losses would equal about 8,000 points, 2,000 cavalry losses about 1,600 points, 30 guns, 900 points, 600 supplies equals 300 points, So you can see that there is going to be a very bloody battle here, with casualties probably upwards of 40 to 50,000 troops. We're looking at a Gettysburg-sized battle here, potentially. The rules that the two sides have agreed upon, just the usual optional rules here at the very start. Artillery capture, as usual, is turned off. There will be no night action or forward movement, no melee in column for infantry, 6 guns per hex rule, and there will be a time limit of 5 days for each side to make their move. If you want more information on the official rules of this game, feel free to check out the link on bottom and you'll read a heck of a lot more than what I just covered above, but that's the gist of it. So what's going to happen in this battle? Well, let's take a look at the map here real quick. So I really don't know how this will play out, as I've mentioned. Is this going to go as planned, with the rebels moving to the northwest to engage the Federal cavalry and Meade's army that was rumored to be in that direction? Or will the rebels be able to decipher from the battle setup that something is a little troubling, and that perhaps Meade and the Army of the Potomac aren't just waiting around for them where they are expected to be? And if they do figure that out, will they just go into a defensive position around Fredericks Hall and Bumpus and maybe consolidate their army before making their next move? Who knows? But nearly all of Stuart is on the field, and this should cause them to be even more aggressive, right? Usually when you have an abundance of cavalry, you're just looking for a fight. So let's flip over to the Federal side. The Federals have a great opportunity to surprise Lee and hit his flank as he advances. Will they be able to move quickly enough to hit Lee before he realizes the trap that he has walked into? Remember, they have just a 4-hour window before the Confederates receive word that Meade has moved south of the South Anna River. The Federals do also have a cavalry problem, but Buford's division is on the map. So do they pull Buford to the south to screen the infantry advance against Lee's flank, or do they try to keep Lee looking to the northwest and distract him and keep him looking in that direction? That's going to be something that they have to decide right at the very beginning. Beyond all that, which objectives do the Federals aim for? Do they concentrate on just the Fredericks Hall area, or do they spread out their attack over many miles? And we haven't even talked yet about what Pleasanton will do when he arrives in the late morning. He arrives south of the South Anna River to the right of the 3rd Corps. Once he arrives, that is 2 fresh Federal cavalry divisions basically on the flank of the Federal force. They could ride to Hanover Junction, they could ride any direction. Stuart will eventually have to engage them somewhere on this battlefield. So what is going to happen? I have no idea. I like games like that, though, where there are lots of different ways that it can be played out based on the decisions that the two sides make. We have reached the end of episode 1. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. In the next episode, we will discuss the first command meetings for each side and find out what their preliminary plans are. We will also follow the two armies during the first hours of the game as they begin to maneuver towards one another across this battlefield. As usual, thank you guys for watching. This has been part of the American Civil War Gaming Club's YouTube channel. Check us out at acwgc.net for more information, and be sure to check out part 2 coming up soon. Go ahead and smash the like button down there on the bottom. It helps the algorithm and perhaps introduces us to more Civil War gamers out there. Thank you guys, and I will see you next time.